All right, good people. Thursday Q&A. Wow, what an interesting week for the market. So I think the big question for a lot of folks is, where does the market go from here? So let's talk a little bit about it. So obviously for those of y'all paying attention, pretty weak market over the last couple of days. Look at the SPY here. We did break our 21, and we have pulled back here to the 50. So it's kind of the tale of two stories. Is technology is significantly weaker here than the overall market. So where the SPY is holding above the 50, the Qs have kind of completely broken it up here. So I think a good perspective before you start trying to figure out, where does the market go from here, is getting a good feel for the overall trend. So if we kind of look at the structure here on the daily chart, the Qs are definitely a little bit ugly, where the S&P 500, this is still a pretty solid structure with the pull back to the 50 holding up, at least as of right now. Those are the daily charts, which of course they get caught up in some of the drama of this week. I think even more interesting though are the weekly charts here. As of right now, if you look at the weekly chart here for the SPY, nothing about this uptrend has been compromised. And as a matter of fact, we're still holding up here at the weekly 8 EMA. So without a doubt, that's a really, really bullish structure. And for the Qs, as soft as these bad boys have been, the Qs are pulling back at the weekly 21. Of course, we could see the market go lower, but should we end up finding the bottom somewhere near that weekly 21, up to this point, we haven't seen this dip to the 21 really since back in, call it, September, October. So both of those charts there, the Qs and the SPY, though they're a little bit soft on the daily time frame from a weekly perspective, we still have a really solid uptrend. So as you're trying to gauge where the market goes from here, I think tuning out a little bit of the 5-minute chart and 15-minute chart action and getting a good feel for the overall trend on something like a weekly can be really helpful. So what I will be looking for, and not right away. I don't think we're going to hit the 21 and rally right back to the highs, but over the next handful of weeks, do we see, especially for tech, starting to put in the bottom somewhere near the weekly mean, which I think at that point, if we can get a little bit of confidence and see Vix dying back down, could be one heck of a spot to start to add. The second thing you want to pay attention to, trying to gauge a market's next move, is going to be the Vix, the Volatility Index. So simple stuff here. As long as Vix is pumping higher, there's a pretty good chance the market is going to continue to sell off. However, we see this pattern time and time again. As the market begins to get sold off, you get the big spike here in Vix. More often than not always, but typically, it's going to move like an individual stock will, in the sense that it's going to move a good 2 to 3 plus ATRs away from the 21 EMA before dying right back down. And typically, once it dies back down, that's when the market can find a bottom and work its way back towards, a little bit more of a bullish party, so to say. So do keep an eye on that. In the event VIX does continue to spike, though, the market can certainly continue to get sold off. So you look at the market back in 2020, VIX continues to spike, it continues to spike, the market continues to get sold off. Ultimately, once VIX does die down, you see the market find a bottom and turn the corner. So pay close attention to this. And I think before you get too aggressive for swings on the upside, I'd be looking for VIX to really die back down to that 21. And now in terms of, how do you try to trade this market? Because I think you got to pay attention to VIX. I think you need to see, ultimately, where do we end up finding some support potentially at those weekly 21s? But for a lot of people right now, they're going to start to try to short the market. And that can be a good idea at the right spots. So, the SPY here isn't really all that extended to the downside. But if you look at something like a tech stock, like an Amazon, you're 2 plus ATRs to the downside. And for the same reasons that we want to be careful about getting long at 2 plus ATRs to the upside above the 21, there's a growing probability once we do see some exhaustion of all the selling pressure, you're going to get a quick rip right back to the mean. So it's the same rules that apply when we're playing the market to the upside. This is typically a pretty crappy spot to get long Amazon, and this can be just as crappy of a spot to try to short this. So, in this kind of environment, you want to be careful about trying to short at that 2 to 3 ATR level, and I think what's easier is trying to play that potential rip back to the mean, and then if we do end up getting stuff there with the overall market, trying to short the move back down. So it's basically the same way we try to play the market to the upside. And for a couple of examples here, it's tough to short Amazon down here because typically you're going to get your teeth kicked in as it rips right back to the mean. But if you can play that move long with a quick put credit spread or a call debit spread, and then if we get stuffed back at the 21, that's where you want to look to short it and catch the move back to the downside. And once, the day will come where we start closing back above the 21, and then you get a bullish structure going, and you're off to the races. So I think those are some things to take into consideration. Before you get too aggressive, looking to load the boat here on longs and buy the effing dip. Wait for VIX to die back down. As long as that's pumping, I think there's a little bit more trouble ahead. But I think having a healthy perspective, who knows where we go from here, but the market is still in a bullish uptrend. The daily charts are getting, a little bit whack, but from a weekly chart perspective, who knows what's coming next. But potentially, the SPY here looks rock solid. And for these tech names that are really catching the whooping right now, if we do see the market continue to go higher into March and April, I think this dip to the weekly 21 could be an awesome opportunity, which, we'll talk more about in Friday's video. But those are some things to pay attention to as we're trying to gauge where the market is going next. I'll talk to y'all in the next one.